Hey. Oh, hey, yeah. How are you? So, you guys playing some hide and seek? Yeah. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another aesthetic imaging video tutorial. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how we can clone ourselves in a really simple way. As usual, the project files will be available for download so that you can follow along. We'll leave a link in the description to where you can find that. We're going to be taking a look at two different shots from the short that we showed in the beginning. First one we're going to take a look at is this one. I just walk up and come out from behind the bushes and tree. All right, and the second shot we're going to take a look at is this one. Notice there's nobody here. And as I move across the screen, boom, another one of me appears. Creepy. Anyway, these are all done in a very simple manner. Before we get started with the actual work, we need to go over a few factors that will keep the whole process as simple as possible. Okay, so the first tip for making this as simple as possible is put your camera on a tripod. Make sure it doesn't move. For this shot, it was actually, I let it record for one whole clip without stopping it in between. And, I just walked past the tree, got to a certain point, and then turned back, and I went behind the tree, and then did this part, and then turned off the camera. Now, for these, I did two separate shots. And for this one, two separate shots as well. Now, when you're doing separate shots, especially if you're outside, you want to shoot these as close together as possible because the sun moves. And if the sun moves, your lighting's not going to match. If you shoot this at two different times of the day, where let's say you shoot it during the morning and the light's coming from this direction, and then I shot this in the evening and the light's coming from over here. Now, if you mix the shot with the light coming from over here with shots with the light coming from the opposite direction, it won't work. Pretty fairly obvious. Now, another tip is shoot this, if you're going to shoot outside, shoot it on a day where there is no clouds, or conversely, fully overcast. Because like the sun, the clouds move. And when they move and go in front of the sun, they can cause different kinds of shadows and lighting effects. So you want to stick to a very reliable kind of source of light. So outside, you want to make sure that, you don't have any clouds or complete cloud coverage. Now, if you shoot this and your background footage is pretty static, then it makes it that much easier. Now, I shot this in the woods with a lot of different moving things, you got the grass waving, leaves going, and all that. So yeah, it's going to make it a little more difficult, but we'll get through it. It's pretty simple either way. So yeah, with those little tips out of the way, let's get started. All right, so we're going to come in here. We're going to open up our footage, and we're going to go to the final shot first. And we're going to take our final shot plate, and we're just going to drop that into a composition. Now let's take this comp and move it out of here, and let's put it in our comps folder. All right, let's rename the comp to Final Shot Comp. There we go. All right, so we have our Final Shot Comp, which contains our Final Shot plate. All right, so let's go to about here. All right, now let's take our clone left, the guy coming from behind the bush here. And let's just scroll this over till just before I pop out. There we go. Let's cut that right there and let it go for the rest. All right, so let's take our Final Shot clone left and drop that on top of our plate. Let's close this up. All right, so after we're fully fully stood up, what we can do is go over to our pen tool up here and just make a mask. And we're going to make it as tight on me as possible. All right, so we're going to hit F on the keyboard to feather this out just a bit. If you go too much, you start cutting into your actual footage. There we go, that's fine. Maybe bring this mask out a little bit. because we're starting to cut part of me off. Don't want that. And I do move backwards, so let's just make sure that the mask encompasses the entire footage that we need here. All right, so let's go back to I'm reacting right here. So just before, and we're going to take this and we can hold down Shift while we drag this, and it will snap it to the playhead. Now let's just play this back real quick to get the timing. Maybe a little bit sooner. There you go. That's good timing right there. All right. So, what you'll notice is that as this mask just randomly pops on, you can see if we hit Shift Command H, we can get rid of our little outline here. We have a sudden pop of, different looking footage. Not by much. So what we can do, let's take this at the beginning of our clip here and just drag this out like this. Now let's hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity. Put a keyframe right before I pop up and go to the beginning and set this to 0. Maybe bring it out a little bit more. There we go. It's not perfect, obviously, but it's a lot less noticeable than it just popping right in. And we're trying to keep it simple. All right, and let's just shorten our comp here. We can bring our playhead to about here and just hit N on the keyboard. That'll shorten our comp. And let's go to composition, trim comp to work area. There we go. All right, so let's take our right shot, double click on that. As you can see, here I am behind the tree. And right about here, we'll cut it right there and drag that in on top of our footage. And we're going to make this just slightly after I pop up. Maybe move that over a little bit more. Give it a little more breathing room. All right, so let's close up this window here. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing for this guy. All right, so I'm going to pull the playhead till I'm completely out from behind the tree. And let's make a mask. And we're going to start this about in the middle of the tree. Bring this down and over. Hit F on the keyboard like before, and we're just going to feather it out. Now, one thing you might notice is that we got a shadow over here from me that's getting suddenly just cast off here. All right, so let's just do the fading thing in. All right, so we'll go to right about here, right before I pop out of the tree. Let's hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity, create a keyframe, and fade that in. Maybe make that a little bit longer as well. There we go. Almost seamless. All right, so now this shadow, let's get rid of it. We don't need it. Let's get rid of it completely. Let's take this footage right here and let's duplicate it by hitting Command D. Let's get rid of our opacity keyframes by just clicking on. No, that was the wrong one. Yeah. All right, let's close up these two layers and let's call this shadow matte. How about that? All right, so let's hit T on the keyboard, bring up the transparency, and let's get rid of the keyframes. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take our mask, we're going to get rid of it. Get rid of it. And we're going to turn off the eyeball for the shadow matte. Let's turn off all the audios too. All right, so let's create another mask around where our shadow is. Whoop! Make sure we don't get our leg in there. Let's hit F on the keyboard to feather it out. Maybe move this around a little bit. All right, so now we've gotten rid of that shadow. And with that, that's pretty much that shot done. All right, so let's check this out. There we go. Keep it so stinking stupidly simple. Stupid. Kiss. And just like that, we have our shot. All right, so let's just move right on to our second shot. Now, this is another simple one. It's a little more complex, meaning this one's going to actually have an animated mask, but still simple nonetheless. All right, let's close up our final shot. Let's do walk close by, and we'll close walk plate. Drop that down into a new composition. Now, even though this is our plate, this is actually going to be on the top. Let's take our composition and bring that up into our comps folder. Now let's take our close walk clone and drop that down below our close walk plate. Turn off the audio. We don't need that. And let's just move this guy about maybe like that. There we go. Sneaks off after I pass by. All right, so let's turn on our close walk plate. If you notice that there's pretty much a split where I take up most of the frame. So we're going to use that to our advantage and make a mask, starts off behind me. And as I move, we're going to animate it so that it spreads out across the comp. All right, so we'll start it off maybe in the middle, right here. All right, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to start outside of the comp. Just click there at the top of the head. Now, what we can do with our pen tool is we can click and drag and we can get a curved line. So what we want to do is just basically trace my outline here. Making sure it lines up as best as it can. All right, so we have our curve. Let's just make another click right here. Whoops. And let's follow this, and we can pull this out, and then we can hit Alt on the keyboard to then move the back end of this handle into a different direction. Basically, with the pen tool, you just want to do your best to follow the outlines and curves of whatever you're tracing. The less points you have, the easier it is going to be to actually animate that. But the less points you also have, the less fidelity you'll be able to have. So you want to try and find that balance between enough points where animating it isn't going to be that hard and a detail. Now, we're not going to need too much detail on this mask. Mainly because this shot's out of focus. All right, so now we have this happening right here. So let's complete the mask. All right, let's bring up our layers again. We'll go to click. Oh no. See, what I've done here is I've done it on the wrong I've done it on the wrong layer. That's a thing that happens sometimes. All right, so let's hit M on the keyboard, select our mask, hit Command C to copy, then just get rid of that mask, and then paste it onto our close walk plate, the correct one. Now, you'll see that I have disappeared. This is not what we want. We want the opposite. We want anything inside the mask to be subtracted. So let's hit M to bring up our mask. And where it says add, we're going to switch that to subtract. Now, if we hit Shift Command H, we can get rid of our outline. Now you can see we have this hard edge, and we don't like that, especially since the shot is out of focus. So let's hit F on the keyboard and feather that out so it looks pretty appropriate. There we go. Perfect. All right. So let's hit our Shift Command H to bring up our mask again. Maybe just make this a little bit bigger. Maybe add a point in here. There we go. All right. So now let's hit M again on the keyboard. And we're going to click on the stopwatch for the mask path. Now, this is the part that gets very tedious. Now, the way I like to do this is we have a starting point here, and I'm going to go forward a bunch of frames, something like this. So we want to hit V on the keyboard to bring up our move tool. We want to click outside of our mask here so that none of these points are selected. Let's select one of them, and let's click and drag over the whole thing, and we can just move that into place, basically into place. Now what we can do is go in here and move these individually. You can get as detailed as you want. That is up to you. Luckily, certain parts like the head and all that don't really change shape much. So we just want to make sure that we get it as close to the edge as possible without, going too much or too little. Whoops. Another thing you can do to help make this a little bit easier to see what you're doing is switch this from subtract to none. All right, so I'm not going to show the entire process here. All right, that'd be ridiculous. And there's really not much to cover, once you have it to a certain point. All right, so now that we have these 2 points, we're going to go in between them, and we can see that it's not quite lined up. It's not quite lined up, but it's not too bad. So we can take these and just pop them over. And for the most part, they'll be animated in between to follow along the edge. Now you can see here, we go off a little bit, mainly just right over here. Oh, everywhere actually. So you just want to go through your entire shot here and just make sure things line up. Pretty good right here. And you can see it automatically will create a keyframe. All right, so let's go forward a whole bunch. Select all these points and let's move them here. And we're just going to repeat this step until we get to the end. All right, so let's go back to where we first started, which is completely off. How did this happen? All right, anyway, back to that. All right, and now we're going to work backwards. right, now we're getting to the end of this. We can just move this over. Go in between frames, see if we're missing anything. Looks like we're good. Now we can take this, move it even further over. And then finally, take it off our screen. So now we have this moving mask, animated mask. And of course, it didn't really take that long to do. Let's go over here and set our mask back to subtract. And let's hide the mask. Shift Command H again. Now you notice there's some parts where you can actually see what's behind me in the original shot. I did this on purpose to show you. You just have to rearrange the mask. Grab one point. If you have to go in and adjust something, you can. Now you can even cut it further in to the actual hoodie if you want. Again, this is a very blurry shot, so all right. So like I said, I did this kind of on purpose to show you that, you just have to sometimes just go back in and animate, readjust some points. Yeah. So because our background is pretty much the same in both shots, um having the mask kind of not quite cling to the footage isn't going to be that big of a deal. It's only where things really change, like let's say there's someone in the background that you really got to pay attention to. Just go frame by frame, make sure everything lines up nicely. So as you can see, this is still a very simple way of doing things, just slightly more complicated with actual animation and rotoscoping. Everybody's favorite thing to do. All right, and we're gonna call that good. And with that, that's actually the end of the tutorial. Congratulations. You just did some simple cloning. And as I said before, the project files can be downloaded so you can follow along, although at this point we're at the end of the video, so it's too late to follow along. Too bad, you're done. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.